My name is Morna Gerard, and I'm interviewing Emily Halevy for Georgia State University's Women's March Oral History Project. The date is February 24th, 2017, and the interview is taking place in special collections at the Georgia State University Library. Okay, Emily, so let's start with the year that you were born and where you were born.
I was born March 2nd, and was right around the corner, 1979, in Barnegat, New Jersey.
Okay. When did you end up arriving in Atlanta?
Well, we moved a lot. My dad was a helicopter pilot, and he also was in the Army. So he flew medevac and was in the reserves for a long time. So we moved around a lot. So we left New Jersey, I think, when I was 2. We moved to Pennsylvania. We left Pennsylvania when I was 5. Moved down to Florida. Moved all around Florida. Grew up in Jacksonville, Florida. And then moved to Atlanta after I graduated college in 2001.
And where within Atlanta do you live?
I currently live in Decatur,
Okay.
unincorporated.
What is your profession?
I am National Accounts Manager for Crawford Media Services. So primarily what we do is digitize legacy media, film, video, and audio. It's a very male-dominated industry.
Can you tell me in what way that shows itself?
Yeah, so, I mean, the most blatant visibility of that is when we go to technology conferences. So I do a lot of archives conferences where it's a lot of women, which is a breath of fresh air. And then I go to these technology conferences, and it's the majority of the attendees are male. And, you know, we'll often have a booth. And when I started at the company and we started going to NAB, for example, NAB is a big broadcasting conference in Las Vegas every year. There were conversations about hiring booth babes as a way to attract attention to the booth. It's funny, there was just a Modern Family episode where the older daughter was yelling at her boyfriend's daughter and said, "You look like a prostitute at a technology conference," or something like that. And I was like, I know exactly what that looks like. So it's very the scales are very tipped in terms of gender. On a regular basis during my job, just internally at the company, there are really only 6 women, I think, at the company right now, out of about 50 people. I go into meetings, conference room meetings, and it's all men around the table and just me. I'm fairly passionate about what I do and what I believe, and so when I am expressing myself, I often get animated. And I have been told to stop yelling by certain men. And that really is counterproductive. There have been times, there have been times where I've gotten really upset and I'm like, I can't cry in front of these people. I have to go, and luckily, because there are only like 6 women at the company, I can go into the ladies' room and be able to cry and not feel like I'm making a scene. You know what I mean? It can get pretty frustrating, and it's not unless you're in that environment. I think it's hard for a lot of other women to even see that kind of misogyny on a daily basis. Like, I have friends who work in the healthcare industry. I have friends who are teachers, and they have a very either heavy female environment or diverse environment. So they don't see that sort of thing. But when it's a very male-dominated environment, all of that misogyny that we think that we got rid of is very blatant and still there and still on the table. And I don't think it's intentional. It just exists, and because people aren't aware of how they're presenting themselves. and the sort of things that are triggering those kind of reactions.
Are you ever able to let people know, or do you feel comfortable letting the men that you work with know that they're exhibiting this kind of behavior?
I have been more vocal about it. I have gotten more vocal about it. I think because I've gotten to a point where I have nothing left to lose. And I don't mean to sound arrogant when I say that, but I am the only salesperson left at the company. So they literally at this point would take a big hit if I were to leave, and they have no real reason to. I think they know that if they were to fire me for whatever reason, that they would hurt worse than I would. And again, I don't mean that to sound arrogant. It's just the nature of the way everything is structured right now. And so because of that, I feel like I have less to lose with being able to express how I feel and express my opinion and express my beliefs. When it comes to the other women in the company, we're all very vocal with each other about the fact that there are a few of us. And at the risk of sounding vulgar, we laugh about swinging dicks. Mm-hmm. There are certain times where one of us or a few of us will get really frustrated. Because all the men will go into a meeting and talk about a lot of stuff that affects everybody else, but not involve the people that it affects. And we all joke that they're all swinging dicks around here today, and it's awful that it has gotten to that point, but that's how we refer to it.
Well, welcome to Special Collections, where we don't have to worry about that.
There are no swinging dicks around here. Nice.
Can you talk about your family's politics? Were you aware that your family had political opinions, or how was that as you were growing up?
Yeah, it was really interesting because from a very early age I was aware of Democrats and Republicans. I remember I was in kindergarten in 1984, which I think was Reagan's second, or was that his first?
I think so.
Carter was 80? Or Carter was 76.
Yeah.
So it was Reagan's second election. And I remember in kindergarten there being a lot of talk about elephants and donkeys. And, it was kind of made to be kind of playful. I also was aware from a very early age that my mom's parents were Democrats. And there was a strict rule in the house, which I didn't really understand earlier on, but there was a strict rule when we went to visit my grandparents. We were not to talk about politics. It was not dinner table conversation, which my grandfather was so special. Everybody respected that. And so for a very long time, everybody abided by, and of course, look at the 80s and 90s. It was fairly, what's the word I want to use? It wasn't as controversial as it is today. At least, not that I remember. When my grandfather, the last 2 years, he died in 2008. So it was right around Obama's election, and people in the family started to become more vocal about their opinions. And it was clear where there was a divide. We still do. We have a very strong Republican side of the family, and we have a very strong liberal side of the family. Now, my parents got divorced when I was in high school still. I was 15. My dad, being in the military, he was always a pull yourself up by the bootstraps, because he did, kind of person. But the military also really pushed him to the right pretty far. And so since, I was raised a Republican. My first election, I voted for Bush. That was 2000, right? 2000. I voted for Bush. I did not vote Republican ever again.
Why did you change?
Well, part of it was I think a big part of it was I moved. So growing up in Florida, growing up around a lot of military people, my opinions were formed by the people around me, and the majority of them were conservative and white and male for a big part of it. So I went to college, and even in college, it was still kind of fractious with my friends and I, because and this was the really funny part. So I actually had to lie to my friends and say that I voted for, who was the Nader. I lied and told them I voted for Nader because I felt like that would be the lesser of two evils than telling them I voted for Bush. So even through college, I took a feminist theory class, and I didn't understand it. Like half the words in the books that we were reading, I was like, I can't even find these words in the dictionary. I was very kind of internally conflicted with what I was being presented with and how I was raised. I was the first one in my family to graduate from college, and from my immediate family. Neither of my parents had college degrees at that point. My sister didn't go to college at that point. So I was coming out of this very conservative environment and kind of being thrust into another environment where I was being forced to expand my level of comfortability, I guess, and push the limits of my intelligence. And I resisted, I think, for a while. Even in college, though, one of my college roommates was assaulted, and we got fairly involved with the National Organization for Women. I was aware of a lot of things. We would do the march every year.
Take Back the Night.
Take Back the Night. Yeah, we did Take Back the Night, I think, every year. So I was getting more and more involved in that side of the gender differences. But really, it was moving to Atlanta that really changed me, because I never really knew a gay person until I moved to Atlanta. I never had really any black friends, like really close black friends, until I moved to Atlanta. Much less a Muslim friend. I moved here, and it really opened my eyes to a whole different side of the world. And since then I've fallen in love with it. I love Atlanta. I love the diversity. I love what it's done to me, and how it's affected me, and how it's affected my family, and how the accessibility of diversity. It took that conflict that I had inside of me and really pushed me out of my comfort zone to a point where I could embrace and really understand what other people from the other side were dealing with. So,
can you talk to your family about your political beliefs now? Are they comfortable with that?
So my mom lives here. She remarried, and they are both liberal. In fact, my mom was going to go on the march with me, but she ended up not. So I can talk with them very openly and candidly. Of course, my husband as well. My sister, it took her a little while. She still considers herself an independent. In fact, I think this was the first election where she voted Democrat. Which I was really proud of her, given the choices. She was never really a Hillary fan. She didn't see Hillary like I saw Hillary. So I was proud of her that she, in my eyes, made a very sensible decision. That's my opinion. My dad, on the other hand, he lives in Virginia now and is remarried, and it's troubling. You know, we've, as a society, we've heard about like the dads we've lost to Fox News. He's one of those. It's really, really hard for me to see how far right he has come or gone. I have not spoken with him. Since, was it Veterans Day? After the election? Is it
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I don't think I've spoken with him since Veterans Day. We've texted, but we have not talked about the results of the election, although I know how he feels. He's very happy. He was a Trump supporter from the beginning. And I know that he was not happy with me going on the march.
Did he tell you that?
He didn't tell me that. He told my sister that in a text. He said he wrote to her that he said to Marie, don't fall into that liberal quagmire. Your sister has embarrassed me and I'm sick over her ignorance, and what other word did he say? Oh, and she has defamed the family name.
That's hard to come back from.
Yeah. Since then, there have been some other things. He talks to my husband, which I don't, I understand it, but I don't think he quite gets it. And so there have been some things that he sent to us. He likes to forward emails. So he's been forwarding me a lot of emails, which I had to put a block on because I just, some of them make me so angry that it really derails my day. But yeah, it's going to be a while.
Yeah.
I've got to figure out how to navigate this. Because I don't want to cut him out, but I can't let him provoke me. It's not healthy for me. So
that's tough. I think you and quite a lot of other women are in the same position.
Yeah, even before that text, I would think about how my dad or some of my other friends could vote for Trump, and I would feel like this fire in my belly that would just kind of start to rise up and consume me. And every once in a while I still get that, but the nice thing about that text was that I realized that it's less about me than it is about them. And so it's not, I'm not taking it quite as personally as I did from the beginning. At the beginning I was like, who on earth could vote for that man? Who on earth, you've heard the things he said, you've seen how ignorant, how on earth could you support that? And I felt like it was an assault against me. It's kind of weird to say that, but I really took it personally. And maybe that was because I could not adequately express my feelings to a point to convince them otherwise. But then I realized it's not nothing I say is going to change nothing. So it's challenging with my dad, but I am grateful that my mom is there and my husband is there, and that my husband and I are on the same page. In fact, all of this has driven us a lot closer to one another. In fact, sometimes I joke he's more of a feminist than I am. So yeah, it's been really, really interesting. It's been a big personal growth experience for me to learn how to navigate this and how to react or not react. You know, when my sister shared that text with me, I immediately called him because I just felt like, you have to say this to me. You can't just send a text to my sister and like light this fire and then not face it. But he didn't answer, and so then I texted him, and I got a really vague response from him like 6 hours later.
It's very passive aggressive.
It is. I am surprised. I'm surprised. I think I'm more surprised because he was the one who really instilled in me the belief to form my own opinion. He was the one who taught me to be skeptical and to question things and to seek out my own answers. And yet when my answers don't coincide with his, he's throwing it back in my face. And that's the part that I'm struggling with. That's the part where I feel like, what happened? Are you the same person that you were? What happened to make you lose that? So
it's going to be interesting in like 20 years' time when sociologists look back or psychologists look back at all of us,
right,
and try and figure out what happened,
right,
with us,
mm-hmm.
because we're at such an impasse right now. We can't talk to one another.
No, and I don't know how to see my way out of it, because I'm not. I know I'm not going to change my beliefs because of what they're saying. I know I'm not going to be inspired by fear or hate. And I don't know that there's a way for them to come back. And not that they're inspired by hate. I don't want to sound... But fear for certainly, yeah. Fear for certain.
Mm-hmm. I wonder if something major has to happen for them to be able to, like something so big.
Yeah.
That unfortunately that would probably be a bad big thing.
Right. And that's been a big topic of conversation around our dinner. We have Sunday dinners at my mom's house every weekend, and that's been a big topic of conversation. Is what does this road look like? How does this end? How does this get resolved? How do we manage to come together? I mean, so much of the talk right now is just give them a chance, but I feel like every morning we wake up and we are, and yet there's something on a daily basis that conflicts with our vision of democracy and our vision of what government should look like. I mean, just yesterday, Steve Bannon at CPAC said, what was it? The deconstruction of our democracy. Or deconstruction of our government. What did I forget?
Something like that.
Something like that. And there's a reason why we have our government in place. It's not perfect. It's slow sometimes, and there's a lot of paperwork, and there's a lot of bureaucracy, but we built it so that it helps people, so that it somewhat creates a level playing field. And it's almost, it feels anarchist to have somebody come and say that they're going to deconstruct all of it.
Imagine if Hillary had said she was going to do that if she had become president.
Right.
It'd be a huge outcry.
Right. Or didn't admonish Putin
mm-hmm.
at the simplest. Or spent every weekend at Mar-a-Lago.
Well, it's great though that you and your family who can talk about it are actually actively thinking about the situation and looking for ways to make things better and for finding a way forward.
Right.
I think that's very important.
Yeah, and my husband and I have gotten really, really involved. We counted up the other day how many different groups that we're associated with right now, and there are like 7 or 8. He was just appointed to District 4 Community Council for DeKalb County. So we've been going through our own stuff with construction and developments over the past 2 years around our house. So we've gotten very engaged in county level politics. And he's gotten super interested in zoning codes. And so he was just appointed to the Community Council Board, which is wonderful. I just applied to the Georgia Windlist Leadership Training. I did not get selected this year. There were 140 applications. Last year there were 35.
That's amazing.
They tripled the size of the class for this year, and the reason why I was not selected, from what I was told, the reason why I was not selected was because my ambition is down the road, where they wanted to really address people who were ready to run in 2018. But to think that there were 140 women who put in their application to get prepared to run for office. Like that's the one thing out of all of this that's really, really, I mean, sometimes I think with all the horrible things that Trump is doing, is it intentional to get us motivated? Are we all being played just so we get more involved? I mean, I look at how many people are engaged right now. I mean, we have our group from the march. We call ourselves the Impeach Pack right now. We're involved in another group. Well, so Impeach Pack has like 55 members right now. We're part of another group called Common Path, which is, I think, up to 90 members. It's just unbelievable. I also joined the DeKalb Democratic Committee, and I'm on... I am now a post holder.
Congratulations.
Thank you, for Carla Drenner.
That's great.
Yeah. It's just, we have gotten so involved and engaged. And I have friends who are not, and who voted for Trump, and who don't get it. I had one friend the other day say, I don't know how you have the time between working a full-time job and being a mother to do all of this. And I kind of just laughed. And I said, we looked at our calendar from 2 years ago and there was nothing on the calendar. There was nothing on the calendar. This year, 5 nights a week, we're off doing something activist-oriented. Whether it's the DeKalb Democrats, or it's the community council meetings, or it's Common Path, or it's some rally or protest that's happening, or or we're getting together as a group, just a random group of women who are getting together to write letters and postcards to our representatives. Like, it's really, really wonderful to see so many people inspired and engaged.
And as a mother, don't you think it's good for your children to see that this is what grown-ups do? And just, this is their normal behavior. You raise children to become like natural advocates and activists.
I'm so proud of my kids. They're really absorbing so much of what we're doing right now. My husband, I didn't know this was going to happen, but and I don't think he really knew until he woke up that morning. But when I was marching in D.C., Matt took the kids on MARTA and they went down to the Atlanta March.
And how old are the kids?
They are 6 and 4.
Awesome.
I mean, just navigating the crowd down here by himself
With 2 children.
with 2 kids, and they had a great time, and they carried signs. I was so proud of them, and they loved it.
What signs did they carry?
Oh, you know what? I don't even know.
Do they still have them?
I don't think so. When I got home on Sunday, they were waiting for me by the MARTA station where we were left off, and they made a welcome home sign for me. I don't know if I still have that. I feel horrible if I don't have it. I need to find that.
It was a crazy time.
It really was a crazy time. And that whole Sunday, I was just on a different plane.
Now, were the kids aware of why they were marching and what they were marching for?
Yeah, well, yeah. So, election night, I was so confident that Hillary was going to win. And raising a daughter in this age where we would potentially have our first female president was so exciting and profound and overwhelming for me. My grandmother died this last year, and she was an inspiration to me. She was very, I don't know that she would have ever called herself a feminist, but she was. She told stories about working for IBM and when, during the war, and when the men came home, she was told that she wouldn't have a job anymore. And she knew that wasn't fair. And on top of it not being fair, she had to support her family. Yeah. And so she marched into the office and said they needed to find her another job. So she was always an inspiration to me, and I really felt like, especially since she was always a Democrat too, I felt like even though she passed before the election, like this was like the win. We were going to pull out a win for her. In fact, she is scheduled to be buried at Arlington with my grandfather, and they have been so backlogged with the greatest generation dying and all these World War II vets passing away that she died in July, and we still haven't gone up to Arlington yet. They haven't scheduled it yet.
And is this your mother's mother?
This is my mother's mother. And so I told my mom before the election that I wanted to have Oma's ashes come to the house so we could have a watch party and have her there with us. And so my mom came over and she brought the ashes, and I set a picture up and I made her a cocktail, and I thought for certain this was going to be a win, and the next day we were going to get a call from Arlington and she was going to be laid to rest, and she was waiting for, I mean, it's so silly, right? But I really, really felt like she was waiting to see our first female president. And of course, we know how that night went. It was so disappointing. And I cried most of the night. I had to get up the next morning to go to the AMIA conference, which is, the Association of Moving Image Archivists. And my flight was at like 9 in the morning, so I had to get up at like 6 to get ready to go. And I cried all night. And I knew I had to get it out, because I knew when I got up in the morning and I saw Frankie, I would have to tell her, and I would have to say that we lost and have to be confident and not scare her. Because despite how disappointing and terrifying it was for me, I can't instill that in her. And so she got up that morning, and the first thing she asked was, did we win? And I said, no, honey. And she said, well, what happens now? And I said, well, we try again next time. And she was like, okay, all right. But she's 6, and she's fully aware that we still don't have a female president. And when is that going to happen? So the equal representation part to me has become the really big driving factor in a lot of my activism of late, which is why I feel like, if that's what I'm going to be working towards, then I need to do that myself. So my goal is at some point in the future to run for office.
Do you have any idea what office that might be?
I'd love to do like state senate or state rep. I think working at the state, I think we all know at this point that working at the state level is really where a lot of the hard work is done.
Incredibly important.
Yeah. I think that Georgia has a chance to go purple, if not blue. I think we're at a point where we can tip the scales on that. And so what a better way to be a role model and inspiration, not just in my words, but in my actions to other women who want to run for office. I mean, even as a little girl, it's so funny. I remember saying, I'm going to be the first female president. And of course, at that point, I wanted to go to law school and had like a clear path to get there. And then my life kind of got derailed with my parents' divorce. And it went from being like goal and mission oriented to just surviving and getting through the next, chapter, not thinking long term. So I feel like now I'm to a point where I'm the sole breadwinner at our house. I have 2 kids. Like I've done all of that, and now I can refocus on those other ambitions and get back on track to where I thought I wanted to be when I was younger.
That's great. And it's, this is, in some ways, we all got a kick up the bum. And
yeah.
I think I see that as the silver lining,
right,
for all of this. That, sounds like you probably kind of would have got there anyway, but this really just pushed you that much faster. Yeah.
It's funny. I mean, looking back over the past 2 years, I think I was actually bored. I mean, this is what it took for me to get re-inspired. Okay. Wake up call.
Yes, it really was a grand social experiment.
Yeah. And it still feels like that. I mean, some days I just feel like this is all just a joke, right? I'm going to wake up in the morning and everything's going to be back to normal. The upside down world. It just feels like we're in this alternate universe still.
Yeah.
And we're 30 days in to the administration.
Well, so when did you hear about the march?
Right. So one of the relationships during the election, one of the relationships that really blossomed was between myself and the director of my son's daycare, Connie Moore. And I don't remember what exactly it was that triggered us to start talking about it, but it both became very clear that we were both Hillary supporters and that we were both feminists and that we were both very excited about this election. In the week leading up to the election, news started coming out of Philadelphia about the transit strike and the unions. And it started to kind of cast a cloud over the election. And so we were both starting to get a little nervous, although I was still so confident. Like I couldn't even imagine a scenario where she didn't win. And so then the election night happened and I go out on my trip. I was gone for, I think, 5 days. And I come back. And by that point, there were already, the minute I got into Pittsburgh, there were people marching in the street. And so within that period of time, I think there was already talk about there being a women's march. And when I got back and dropped, I think it was the following Monday, I dropped Finn off at school. And she and I finally had a chance to talk about everything. And we both knew we needed to do something. We had a lot of energy inside of us that we needed to do something with. And so we talked about going to the march, even though at that point it was still like, we didn't really know what it was going to turn out to be. We just knew we had to go. We felt this compulsion to go. And so we were like, do we just go by ourselves? She mentioned that her husband had a relationship with a busing company. And I'm like, we can fill a bus. We can fill a bus. So then we looked at going through, by that point, the Georgia March, all of the states had kind of already organized into their action committees to go to the Washington March. And Georgia had their group. And so we reached out to, I think her name is Lindsay Arundel, to see if we could get on the transportation committee for the groups going from Georgia. But that had already been filled. Okay. And I knew I couldn't just get on a bus. There had to be more action involved for me. I couldn't just, I don't know why. I had to do something. I had to find a way to wake up every morning. And so I think it was that Wednesday, following a week from the election, we said, all right, we're going to charter a bus. And Connie put the initial deposit down, and I told her, I was like, we're going to fill this thing. And it was a 49-seat bus that we were chartering. And so I initially reached out through private message to a bunch of women who I thought would be interested. And
are these women that you know through daycare or through
everything?
Okay.
Either from, I think I only reached out to Georgia people at this point, but it was through like people I met through Frankie's school, people who I met through Frankie's previous daycare, the Marcus Jewish Community Center, friends who I have known just by way of living here, neighbors, family, and immediately started getting some takers. Fitwit, there was another group of people who I worked out with. And we got a lot of Fitwitters to come with us, which was really cool. I think there were three women from Fitwit who joined us with some of their moms and partners. And then kind of word just spread. And so it was kind of funny to see how connected. I know, it really was like a spider web of people. And so, this person would invite that person, and then the word would get around to this person. And there were some nights where I felt like I was running an auction towards the end. Like the month leading up to the march, it was like people who were deciding to stay and go to the Atlanta March, and people who wanted to go to DC. And so it was like, okay, this person dropped out, so now I have this seat open. And then I'd get another email, and I had a wait list at one point of people who wanted to join us. So it was really, really exciting. One of the other things that was suggested by actually Laura Sterrett at Emory was to start a GoFundMe.
Ooh.
And so I did. And we were able to raise over $2,000 to sponsor students and teachers to ride with us.
How quickly did you get that money?
It kind of came in fits and spurts. There's always like that trigger that happens that people are like, yeah, I'm going to donate. But money rolled in. I guess I created that towards the end of November, early December, and money rolled in up until the day before the march. And so, yeah, it was really, really great.
And do you know, like, you don't need to tell me who donated, but was it like women who were donating, or who, what's demographic?
That was another fun thing to see. It was, the majority were women. The majority were people who were paying extra, so they would pay for their seat, and then they donated $50 extra dollars for somebody else to ride. I had friends from Florida who were donating money and supporting me, which, I felt like, to a large extent, their donation was like a really nice emotional support for me. I really actually had like 5 friends from high school who donated, which was, I just felt like, yes, you know, these are Florida women who are helping us fight the good fight. So that was really, really fun. And it allowed us to sponsor, I think it was 8 seats altogether. Yeah.
That's tremendous.
Yeah.
That's a good percentage of the people
Yeah.
on the bus.
So one was a student at Agnes Scott, and then the rest were teachers and young professionals who, you know, I mean, $155 to go to DC is a lot of money. So we definitely wanted to make sure that the economic diversity was on our bus.
So were you filled? Did you have your final list of people?
It was up until the very end.
All right.
We had somebody back out at the last minute, and I was like in line at Target saying, "If you want to come, we have a seat open." And then of course we get the bus, and the bus is actually like a 54-seat bus, and I'm like, we could have added 5 more people. I mean, we needed the space because we all overpacked. But I felt like we could have really added more people. But it was up until the end. And one of the most fun people that ended up joining. So I had one of my neighbors came with me. A bunch of moms from Frankie's school came. But a girlfriend from college who lives in San Francisco was looking at going to the march, but the flights into DC were so expensive. So instead she flew to Atlanta and joined us on the bus to go up. Which was so much fun. It was so much fun. But yeah, it was up until the end. Like the day before, I was still like confirming seats. All right, you have a seat. Janet Carson, she was 1 or 2 days before the march, I think, where we confirmed her seat. So.
Now you had an organizational meeting,
right?
Like the week before.
It was the Saturday. We were supposed to have it 2 Saturdays before, but we had a threat of an ice storm.
That's right. That
never really manifested. But so we scheduled it the Saturday before the march, and I was really, I mean, I knew that we had to, but I didn't fully understand the value that it would add until afterwards. You know, we spent so much time getting people recruited, and a lot of these people I did not know, and I knew that a lot of these people did not know each other. And so I felt, at the very least, this would give everybody a level of comfort riding in a bus with a bunch of strangers. And we invited you out to speak about the oral history program, and then we also invited Lieutenant Jennifer Ross from the Decatur Police Department to give us a safety lesson.
Did you know of her before? Or
yeah, actually, my husband and I lived in a house on Candler 10 years ago, and our house was broken into, and Lieutenant Ross was the detective who showed up to help us. So I knew her. I don't think she remembered me. I don't think she would have remembered me, but so I've known of her for a long time. But it was actually Connie Moore who recruited her to come to the meeting, because Connie takes self-defense classes with Detective Ross. So she was the one. I was looking for somebody to help with, conflict management, because my expectation was we were going to have some kind of counter protest. And when I couldn't pull anybody in for that, Connie suggested Lieutenant Ross, and she was wonderful.
Yes, she was.
And she ended up bringing Cassie Yoder, I think was her name. And Cassie is a friend of hers who used to work in DC, who has worked in politics and done a lot of organizing and has seen a lot of organizing with marches happen. And so her insight was invaluable. And between the two of them, I felt like we were all prepared going into what could potentially happen, how to react in big crowds, how to navigate the city, what to bring with us. it was really, really helpful. And then, of course, just to put faces to the names of all of these women who I'd been working with. And we had all women except for one man on the bus.
And who was that?
His name is Clyde Lloyd.
Was he somebody's husband?
A boyfriend, I think. Yeah.
Did he realize he was going to be the only man?
I don't know if he realized that or not. But we certainly appreciated him being on the bus with us. At the very least, for some comic relief.
Can you describe the bus journey itself?
Right. So we chartered the bus through U.S. Coachways, and we decided to meet at Kensington MARTA station at between 5 and 6, I think it was, on Friday night. And so, everybody started pouring in with that between that hour. There was, all of this stuff that we were supposed to, signs without sticks, nothing that could be construed as a weapon, clear backpacks. There was a lot of conversation about who's finding the clear backpacks. And so while we're all waiting for everybody to show up, there's like this distribution of clear backpacks and everybody packing up their stuff and getting prepared and who needs what. I mean, it was really, we thought we were going into a situation that was way more heavily patrolled, I guess would be the word, with heavier security, which there was not. But so there was a lot of camaraderie as we were boarding the bus. We took our picture in front of the bus, and then once everybody got there, we got on, and we had, what was her name? We had one bus driver who was a female. I forget what her name was. I want to say like Roz or something, but I don't think that's right. And she drove us up to Greenville, South Carolina, where our next bus driver was going to take over, Rollo. We got onto 85, and we did not hit Jimmy Carter, and there was a fire on the bus. Which at that point I was like, this is not happening. We're not going to make it. So because the bus was so new, it only had 3,800 miles on it. Not everything was tested out. And so one of the women had plugged her phone into the USB port, and it started smoking. And so, of course, Clyde, being the one male on the bus, gets up with the fire extinguisher and he takes control of the situation. We had pulled over to the side of the road. And it was a big laugh, but the bus driver was like, "Look, it's a new bus. Just be careful." And so we got back on the highway and kept going, and then smells started coming out from the bathroom. So the tank, I guess, because it was so new on the bus, like every time we hit a bump, this just hideous smell would start coming up. And so the poor people in the back of the bus were just miserable for the most part. We were supposed to have Wi-Fi. The bus didn't have Wi-Fi. It was just a calamity of errors on the bus ride up. We stopped in Greenville to switch drivers. We stopped at a McDonald's, and I'm thinking the whole time, really, here's 50 women who are all dressed in pussy hats and t-shirts and sashes, clearly going to the march. And we're rolling up into Greenville, South Carolina, which in all respects is a very conservative area. I was expecting there to be some sort of potential conflict when we walked into the McDonald's. And instead, everybody there, for the most part, was very nice. In fact, because there were 50 women lining up to use the bathroom, one man guarded the bathroom for us while we used the men's room.
That's great.
Which I just thought, this is incredible. This is okay. good mojo, good vibes. We're gonna keep going. This is gonna be a good trip. So we kept going. We had to stop somewhere in Virginia to fuel up at like 3 a.m. And all, we all have to we have to get off the bus while they refuel. So we all go into this gas station, and you can see the other buses coming in, which was also really cool. And, again, pussy hats and T-shirts, like it's obvious who's going where. So it was really fun to start to see all of that and see just the massive migration of people going to D.C. It was really, really cool. I did not sleep on the way up at all. I maybe got 10 minutes sleep. I was excited and I was nervous. The reports coming out of the inauguration with some violence was starting to worry me. That was part of the reason why my mom didn't go, because she started to get nervous and didn't want us both to be in a situation where we were both gone. I mean, not to be morbid, but and so I started to get nervous because honestly, none of us knew what we were going into. Yeah,
brand new situation.
It
for
really,
most people.
It was. We didn't know what to expect. I mean, we knew that there were going to be, I think that early estimate was 200,000, maybe 300,000 people going.
Now, did you feel a sense of responsibility?
I did.
Like more than because you were one of the people
yes.
who organized this.
Yes.
So.
Yeah. So what's funny is I brought a flask with me, but I did not drink. I knew if I had something to drink, it would help calm my nerves and I'd be able to sleep. But I didn't want to drink anything on the way up because one of the women that went with us, Davis, she's 19,
yeah. And
I felt like I needed to be responsible for her. I felt like I needed to be responsible for my group. I needed to. I couldn't be compromised, even though I didn't sleep.
Did other people sleep? I mean, how was the mood on the bus?
Yeah, everybody was pretty excited. Yeah, some people slept. Some people brought sleeping pills so they could sleep. A lot of people didn't sleep. The mood was pretty good on the bus. I mean, aside from the smells, everybody was pretty excited, pretty happy, pretty pumped. At one point, between Virginia and DC, I started looking on Facebook and I started watching videos of women marching. And I realized that there were marches in Malawi. There were marches in Romania. There were marches in what were some of the other places? I was just
Antarctica.
Yeah, well, Antarctica, right? I started to get this awareness that this was much bigger than any of us ever imagined, and I felt proud to be part of this movement, but I felt like it was inspiring on so many different levels. Not just, it was like all of these women from these countries where there really is literal gender oppression and misogyny, and they're marching, and they're marching kind of for us, but we're also marching for them. And it was like this connection with these women all over the globe who were rising up and saying, we've had enough. And I just was so moved by that, and really spent the majority of the bus trip just watching those videos on the way up and on the way back.
And that must have been great, like as you get closer to it, like there's this sort of reinforcing why you're doing this, like all the way there.
It was validation. I mean, to be I mean, I live in a bubble. I'm in Decatur. I live in a bubble. The majority of the people here are liberal. I mean, DeKalb County's always gone blue. I don't even know how long it's gone blue, but it easily goes blue. So I live in a bubble. I operate in a bubble. But at the same time, I felt like there was a lot of opposition or a lack of understanding of why we were marching. And I don't even think there was any kind of cohesive reason for us to march. I think everybody was compelled by their own individual reasons to go. But there was a lot of just misunderstanding and lack of understanding of what we were doing. And so finally I had this validation and solidification of why it was we were doing what we were doing from a global perspective, not just from my blue bubble, but from women all over the world, and men too. I mean, it was a beautiful thing to watch. And then my friend Keegan, who came from San Francisco, she was sitting a couple seats over, and she sent me this video, and it was Obama. It was an animated video with a speech that Obama gave. And it was him talking about going, like, early campaigning back in 2007. And he went, I think he said he was in South Carolina. And he went to this meeting, and there was this woman in the back of the room. And he was talking about what a horrible day it was and how he didn't want to be there, and he didn't feel like anybody else wanted to be there. And there was this woman in the back of the room, and she said, "Fired up." And everybody then echoed her, "Fired up." And then she said, "Ready to go." And everybody echoed her, "Ready to go." And that was another like tipping point for me, was like, this is our mantra. This is it. And so I sent it to everybody. We used, God, I forget what the program was. We were really worried about internet availability. And so I found this program where you could send an email out to a group of people, and they all had to sign into it. So I sent an email to everybody. I can't remember what the name of it was, but everybody saw it on the bus. And so we pull in to DC, and all it took was somebody saying "fired up," and I didn't even know everybody had watched it, but everybody watched it, and everybody on the bus said "fired up," and I was like, this is amazing. This is amazing. So, one of the other, the organization of the march was it was all very kind of last minute information being relayed. So I think maybe the week or two before the march, we knew that all the buses were pulling into RFK Stadium. But even then, we weren't quite sure of where we were getting dropped. Was the bus going to stay there? Was he going to go and take the bus with him, or was he going to leave the bus there and go to the hotel and sleep by himself? So that was the other thing. So we chartered the bus. We had to get hotel room for him. We had to figure out transportation for him, whether he was taking the bus, if he was going to take the bus, where was he going to park the bus? If he was going to leave the bus, how was he going to get to his hotel? We had to coordinate all of this. And so we pull up to RFK, and we were early. I mean, we got into DC, I want to say at like 6:30, 7 in the morning. So we were pretty early. But we pulled up, and they didn't have our parking permit. And Connie and I were like, we pay for it. So I pulled it up on my phone, and I sent it to her, and it took about 30 minutes, I think. At one point, we were like, we're just going to pay. Can we pay cash for it now? We will pay for it. We'll pay for a second parking permit. Like, just let us get in here. We came all this way. Just let us park the bus. And then, I don't know, at one point they said that U.S. Coachways pulled back all of their parking permits. It just felt very kind of weird. And then suddenly they found them all. And we were like, okay, just let us. So we all finally pulled in. And we all got off the bus. We were like, I don't know, we were probably like the 10th bus that pulled in. I mean, the parking lot was empty at that point.
Do you know how many buses were planning to be there?
I knew the count at one point. Wasn't it like 800 buses or something?
I think it was more than that. Wasn't it like 1,200?
Was it 1,200? I know that they maxed out on the bus permits. So whatever that number was. So then we took some time to get off the bus. I felt kind of bad because a lot of people had donated trail mix and bananas and like all sorts of stuff for us to take on the ride, and like written letters and things like that. And between all of the chaos of getting Rollo to where he was supposed to go and making sure everybody, we organized into groups. We called ourselves 4-packs for the most part. Everybody kind of split off into groups of 4. Although the counts, some people had 3-packs. We had a 9-pack. And that was at the advice of Lieutenant Ross. But so, just getting off the bus, getting Rollo to where he had to go, making sure everybody was paired up with who they were going with, knew where they were going. I totally flaked and didn't get all of the stuff distributed. And I felt so bad because we had so much stuff. We had hand sanitizer and like we had 4 or 5 cases of water. I mean, people just poured out whatever they could and gave us so much support. It was beautiful. But it was also so chaotic that I didn't really get a chance to organize that distribution. So I felt bad about that. But it probably took about an hour for us to get Rollo squared away and get him where he needed to go, and then for all of us to get where we needed to go. So in my group, like I said, we had a 4-pack, a 3-pack, and a 2-pack that all grouped together. So we ended up being a 9-pack. It was my friend Ellie, 2 of her coworkers, or not coworkers, but classmates, Megan and Allie, and then my friend Keegan from San Francisco, my neighbor Connie White, who joined us, which was wonderful having her there, my friend Karen Carson, who I know through another friend of mine, and her mother Janet, and then Davis from Agnes Scott, the student from Agnes Scott, who happens to be my dental hygienist's daughter. I know the connections are really just incredible. And then myself. So we were a 9-pack. And Davis's mom actually was able to land. She had a friend who was in D.C. the week before and had her pick up a bunch of Metro passes.
Oh, nice.
And so we all had a Metro pass. And so we didn't have to wait in line to get one at one of the vestibules. So we marched past, we got out of RFK, and we went past the Armory, and there were soldiers outside, and so, we waved hi, and they were all very friendly. We turned the corner and went around to the Metro station there, and when we had pulled up on the bus, there was nobody in line, and now the line was like almost halfway down the block. Mm-hmm. But we were able to scoot past a lot of that traffic and just go straight down to the Metro. And at the time, the Metro was still pretty open. And so we just got on the train, and we knew where we were going, and we got off at South Congress?
Mm-hmm.
South Congress. And we got off, and we suddenly saw the sea of pink hats. So we got through the turnstiles, and one of our 9-pack had to refill her Metro card. So we figured, let's do this now before we have to get back on, because we don't know what the end of the day is going to look like. And so we all were gathered together, and Keegan started chanting, "Fired up!" Fired up! And so we're at the base of the escalator going up, and we see just the sea of women, and they're all joining us in this chant. And of course, we're still inside, so it's like echoing. And it was incredible. It was just an incredible way to start the morning. And we kept it going all the way up and out of the Metro station. And then again, it was like, we get out, and it's this whole other sea of people. And people are handing out signs, like the National Organization of Women was handing out signs. I think I gave you one of my intersectional feminism signs. I think that was from Now. Planned Parenthood was giving out signs. Everybody was handing out stuff, stickers, nasty woman stickers, and all sorts of things. And so we get out, and then we hit, Independence? we knew we had to go down Independence. And we're going down this hill, and you see the Capitol on the right, and just this sea of women in front and behind you. And it really was just a sea of pink. Mm-hmm. It was just a sea of pink. Male or female, but it was a sea of pink. And it was just incredible. And we're all just looking at each other like, and we're looking around. So we get down to where the Native American Museum is, where they were doing the rally. And we're trying to follow, and things are starting to get kind of tight. And so we're walking around, and we tried to, jump over bushes and stuff. And of course, we had Janet with us, who had just had back surgery. I think she just had back surgery. So we had to be a little cautious with where we were going and how we were getting there. And we had to slow down a little bit just to make sure that she stayed along with us. And there were 9 of us.
How did you manage to stay together?
Right.
That was a tight crowd.
Yeah, it was. So we knew we had to come up with some phrase. And so first we called ourselves a 9-pack, because there were 9 of us. And then we were like, we need something a little catchier than that. So then we called ourselves the Peach Pack. So anytime things would get a little too tight and we were trying to navigate through a crowd, we would say Peach Pack, and we would all kind of tie together and try to close up and get through the crowd. And that was one of the more interesting things. I mean, I've been in some crowds where they're just jerks. And this crowd, it was like if they knew that you were part of a group, they would stop and let you all stick together and get through. There was nobody pushing. There was nobody shoving their way through. It was all very respectful of one another, which I thought was great. So we tried to get to the rally, and it was pretty clear we weren't going to get close enough at that point. We thought we were early, but we just couldn't get close enough. And so we kind of gave up on that idea. And it was really nice because collectively, 9 people, 9 different opinions, very easily we could have gotten into some sort of clash of who's doing what. But we were all on the same page. We had the same, it was really incredible how we all kind of just unanimously agreed on what the plan was and was open to whatever suggestion anybody had. And I kind of attribute a lot of that to Lieutenant Ross instilling us that safety was the priority. So there was nobody who was like trying to do anything there were no stage divers or mosh pit, and everybody was like, all right, let's just stay safe, let's stay together. And so we did. So once we all agreed that seeing the rally was not going to happen, we tried to navigate our way out of the crowd. So we headed up towards the National Gallery of Art at that point. And at that point it was like 11. The time it took to navigate through that crowd, it was amazing how long it took. But so it was like 11, and a bunch of people had to use the bathroom. So we kind of took a little break and sat by the porta potties and let people, we stopped and had a snack. Some of us sat down. And we kind of reassessed the situation. But really, it was just amazing people watching.
Were you able to see, because I think you possibly could have seen a monitor from you weren't able to see
I didn't even
anything.
know there was a monitor. There were no speakers from what we could hear. We couldn't hear anything except for the occasional crowd noises and chants. So we knew that something was happening, but we didn't know who was saying what or who was on stage or what.
Were you able to see any of the speeches like afterward?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when I got back on the bus, I spent some time going through some of the speeches.
Which ones stood out for you?
What is her name? From Kentucky.
Ashley Judd.
Ashley Judd. So Ashley Judd's I watched first. And I thought that was really brave of her to be so descriptive And so, I mean, women talk in circles. We can get pretty descriptive and pretty, I mean, is it vulgar to talk about your period? I guess we, as a society, we've made it vulgar to talk about your period, but within female circles, it's not. And I think if you were in close quarters, what the poem that she read wouldn't have been anything, but on a stage, it gave it a whole different power. So I really respected her for doing that. Angela Davis. Who else did I see? I know Madonna, and of course that's what everybody on the other side focuses on, which is disappointing. And from what I understood from other people who were there and up close and able to listen, there was like a collective moan when she said what she said. And I know that I know the rally went on a lot longer than they anticipated. Like Madonna wasn't even on the schedule. Yeah. She wasn't even on the list of speakers, and she was there. So, yeah. But for our group, it was less about the rally anyway, and more about just being there.
When you were looking around, because it's great for people watching, which of the signs did you like? Which stood out?
So my favorite, I've always been a big fan of The Big Lebowski. So my favorite was "Shut the fuck up, Donnie, you're out of your element." And there were a couple of those. And I just adored that one. But I was really, really impressed by the amount of issues that were being represented, whether it was, education, not deportation, whether it was women's pay equity signs, whether it was, Black Lives Matter was well represented. In fact, at one point we were going through a crowd and the crowd was chanting Black Lives Matter, and I looked to my left and there was a black woman, and you could tell she was overwhelmed. I don't know where she came from. I don't know what her daily life is like, but I could see in that moment that she felt validated. She felt like she finally felt like she mattered. And I remember thinking, I want to give her a hug, but I couldn't. I was just in awe of her, and and so I didn't. But I just was amazed by her, and amazed that that crowd had the ability to infect her with that sense of belonging and purposefulness.
Now, you obviously you found that something that was emotionally sort of like it brought your emotions out.
Mm-hmm.
Are there moments throughout the day that made you feel emotional?
Yeah, there was one other moment where we were we kind of took another break at the National Gallery of Art, and we decided to sit down. All of us decided to sit down for a while, but before we did that, my neighbor Connie and I, who've always been very close, we were both standing there, and I don't even know what we saw other than just looking at where we were in the crowd, and we looked at each other and we were just overwhelmed. It was amazing. And we both teared up and we gave each other a big hug. That might have been the only other time I teared up. The majority of it was just this amazing sense of purpose. Walking down and chanting and having that call and response was so chilling. I mean, goosebumps all throughout the day. I don't think any of us realized just how strong our voices were. And then we did manage to march. So we went down from the National Gallery of Art down, what is that, Constitutional? Constitution. And then we made a left onto, I'm not even going to pretend to know the street names. We made a left, and then we made another right, and then we walked across a field, and then we made a right, and we ended up kind of stuck in this big crowd right by the African American, the new Smithsonian Museum for African American History. And so we were there, I don't even know how long we were there, half hour, 45 minutes. We were in this crowd, and it was kind of impassable. But then suddenly people started moving again. So then we kept marching, and we marched down, whatever that is, 6th? I don't know. And we kept marching down, and then we made a left and then a right in front of the White House. And again, it was like the call and response, that our voices are being heard, just being a part of this huge crowd.
Which of these chants resonated with you?
Well, I love the Fired Up, Ready to Go.
Yeah.
I mean, that kind of was symbolic of the whole day for me. Because it wasn't just about that day, it was about the movement itself. But then we also chanted the Fiona Apple song. Oh gosh. I don't want your tiny hands anywhere near my underpants. I don't want your tiny hands anywhere near my underpants. And then welcome to your first day. We won't go away. Welcome to your first day. That was another really favorite one as we marched past the White House. And again, that was another one where it was like, this is what it's about. This is your first day. This is our first day. We are on call, and we're not going away. And then education, not deportation. Build bridges, not walls. Black Lives Matter. There was another good one. There was something, we chanted something about we want our whole dollar. I forget what that one was.
Is this in reference to pay equity?
Yes. Something about we want our whole dollar. And then this is what tell me what democracy looks like. This is what democracy looks like. And I've seen that, I've heard that at all of these other marches, that chant with variations of tell me what feminism looks like, or tell me what a feminist looks like, this is what a feminist looks like. And what was interesting about those was that it was often being led by somebody in a tree. There were a lot of women in trees leading these kinds of chants, which I don't know how that started either, but that was a thing, and it was fabulous. It's wonderful.
Did you see any opposition protesters along the way?
We only saw one, and that was in front of the National Gallery of Art, and I wouldn't even say that it was an opposition protest. It was a pro-life, someone with a pro-life sign. And, it was not just like a sign. It was like this big thing. But it was, there was no kind of opposition to the opposition. Like there was, I think at one point people started chanting "Love Trumps Hate," but that was it. There was not any kind of altercation or confrontation with that person. But that was all. That was it.
Earlier you said it was very clear that people came to the march for different reasons.
Yeah.
What was your main reason? like I said, I just felt compelled. And
obviously had a lot of time to think about why I felt compelled to go, but a lot of that was going back to me being a woman working in a man's field. It really was the feminist issue. It was the fact that we got so close to having the symbolic election, and it just fell apart. It just slipped through our fingers. And for me, it was saying, we're not going to let this happen again. This is not going to happen again. I am here. I'm a woman. I will continue to fight for equal representation. And leading up to the election, I had a lot of random conversations because I travel a lot. So I was on a lot of flights, and I tend to get chatty with people next to me. And I had quite a few conversations with people about the fact that I was one of the reasons why I was voting for Hillary was because she was a woman. I mean, if I were to put a caveat on that, it would be one of the reasons I was voting for Hillary was because she was a feminist. And realizing with the whole intersectionality and inclusiveness that feminism is not gender-based. Mm-hmm. But I think there is something really powerful and profound to having someone who has your shared life experience to a certain extent. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind Hillary's been in meetings where she was the only woman. There's no doubt in my mind, because we saw it, where she was told to be quiet or to stop yelling. People always one of the biggest complaints about her was that she was yelling all the time. I'm like, this is a woman who, like so many of us, cannot win. We are either considered passive or demure, or we're considered brash and outspoken and too loud. I mean, you look at Elizabeth Warren. She was told to sit down and shut up.
But the men were not.
Right.
Doing exactly the same thing.
Right. And one of the other things, and the nevertheless she persisted, I mean, that was one of the bigger things with Hillary that I just adored her for, was because you look at someone who for 30 years, she's had an active campaign against her. She's had lies told about her. She's had conspiracies told against her. And yet, she persisted, and she persevered, and she pushed through, and she fought obstacle after obstacle. And beyond any other trait, that is what I admire, and that is what we need. We need somebody who's going to continue to fight for us. And so I just felt like there was a big baton being passed. And, you know, I mean, I've been a part of conversations where we've talked about my generation not having a political stance, not having anything to fight for. I mean, look at the 90s. Like, Kosovo, okay, it's across the world. You know, Sudan, okay, Rwanda, okay. I mean, these were big things, but they were across the globe. They weren't right here in front of our face. We could easily ignore them. We could turn off the TV and forget about them. This was a call to action for us, and I really felt like, all right, you know, give me that. Mm-hmm. It's my turn now. Let me carry it the rest of the way until it's time to turn it over to my children.
I work with a lot of older women, and they've complained about this for many years. It's like, we fought long and hard, and we really want the younger generations to take this on. Yeah. And I think this is actually truly happening.
It did it.
When you were at the marches, talk about the different age groups, the different kinds of people you saw around you.
It was incredibly diverse. I mean, obviously there was a very strong older female contingent, but there were babies there. There were dads there. There were nuns there. I think I was most inspired by the number of clergy members that were there. from various different religions. Because, you consider the religious right. Mm-hmm. We never talk about a religious left. So I was really impressed by that. It was just amazingly diverse and so inclusive, and just, it was beautiful. It was just beautiful. The number of different groups that were represented and who showed up, old men, young men, God, the number of strollers that were there. I could not imagine. I wanted to bring Frankie with me. A big part of why I didn't was because I was organizing this group and knew that I needed to have my attention focused on these 49 women rather than my 6-year-old daughter. But I was so impressed by the number of kids that were there. And there were a lot of younger women there. And again, it was very diverse.
Mm-hmm. Were the people, I'm circling back, you say you work with a bunch of guys who are not always, don't always understand a female's perspective, but did they know that you were marching?
A good number of them did. My boss, the owner of my company, he's a very liberal. And, he's got pictures of Angela Davis and Chairman Mao and Pete Seeger and Woody Guthrie all around the building. We have the Power to the People John Lennon picture in our office. So I told him, he knew, and then my direct supervisors knew, and the women that worked there knew. And then I started to tell a few other people, and it was actually kind of funny what this election did, because it did move everybody to a corner. People started to become way more open about what they believed. And so I started having conversations with people, with men who I didn't previously know if they were Republican or Democrat or what side they were on, and learned that a lot of them are Democrats. And we had a father and a daughter work for us, and I invited both of them to join us. Neither of them ended up going on the trip with us, but I was surprised that there was interest there in going. I think there were probably some men who didn't know I was going, or at least didn't ask me about it. But others who knew, yeah.
And did they talk about it when you got back?
Some of them asked me about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
With enthusiasm or
curiosity?
Okay.
Yeah, it was all just more out of curiosity. It wasn't. Actually, one of my boss's wives went with us, so he knew. His wife and one of her friends came on the trip with us. So he was excited about it. But it ended up getting so much coverage that I think the people who really were curious and wanted to know about my experience were the people who I was close to anyway and who already knew. And then the other people kind of had their curiosity filled with the news reports.
Let's talk about the news reports. What did you think about the media coverage of the march as a whole?
Well, obviously it depends on who you're watching, which station you're watching. What was funny is I got a text from a friend of mine who was I didn't even know that they were going to live stream it all day. I had no idea. But a friend of mine texted when Madonna said what she said. And I was like, what? Madonna's here? What did she say? But my mom actually was watching. She was very nervous the whole day, but she knew I made it up there safely, and then she watched all day. And so by midday, she knew that everything was very peaceful and calm, and so her concerns were put to rest. So for the most part, I think that the march was adequately portrayed, and I was really, really amazed at how much attention it got. Because again, we haven't seen that in our generation. We really haven't. It always all the news always goes towards the negative. You know, it's the protests that get violent that get on the news, and this wasn't.
It's like there were no arrests at all anywhere.
Not a single arrest all day. Which was amazing. We did see at one point when we were making a left, we had to clear the street because a police car was going by, and there was somebody in the back of the police car who was very animated. Now, I don't know if he was related to the march. I don't know if he was with the march or in opposition to the march, if he was a part of the march, or he could have just been some random guy getting arrested in a completely different part of town and they just happened to be going down the street this way. So I don't know. But yeah, I was amazed. And my reaction to that was, this is what the world would be like if women ruled the world. I mean, if we had more women in government, more women making decisions, more women represented in every facet of our society, imagine how peaceful. And that was one of the other things that Lieutenant Ross said to us, was that one thing to keep in mind, or maybe it was Cassie, one thing to keep in mind is you're going to a march where the majority of the marchers are female. By nature of women, it is likely going to be a peaceful event. And it was incredibly peaceful and incredibly loving. And while we've found our voice and certainly used it, no violence.
Now, talk about did you have any interactions with the police officers, or how did you feel that their presence was sort of felt around the march?
Yeah, I think aside from seeing the soldiers at the armory, they were very friendly. And then the police officers that we saw coming out of the metro station, they were all very friendly. And we saw some that were holding signs.
Really?
I think maybe it wasn't a sign, maybe it was either a pin, I don't know, but there was just a very it was very clear that they were with us. They were not there to be a blockade to us. They were there to be in support of us. And that was really well represented. Yeah, I mean, we really didn't come across that many officers, but those that we did, they were all very, aside from them making sure that people cleared the street for when the police cars came by, I mean, they were all very supportive and there and present, and there were a lot of people thanking them. Yeah, it was really lovely.
Let's talk about pussy hats. What do you think about the whole concept of pussy hats? I know that some people, like feminists even, were sort of saying beforehand that this was kind of frivolous, and there are major issues that we're dealing with, and we're all wearing these pink pussy hats. First of all, did you wear one?
I did. So what's funny about the pussy hat is that my daughter already had one. And she just had, she had a pink cat hat, winter hat. And so the weekend before the march, I wore it out. And of course it was small on my head, but I was like, well, I have one. I'm going to wear it. And so I wore it out, or she had it and then didn't want to wear it. So I put it on, and we were doing a scavenger hunt around Decatur. That's right. And people were commenting on the hat then. And then I brought it with me, but then one of our riders, Anne, she made a ton of them. And hers were out of felt. They weren't out of yarn, like a lot of, like the symbolic, what everybody, what's kind of become the symbolic one. But anyway, so she made a ton of them and handed them out to everybody on the bus. And so I wore one of hers. And, you know, I mean, is it frivolous? I mean, are dreadlocks, are, you know, flowers in your hair? Like, they were representative of the movement. It became a symbolism of the march and a symbolism of the movement. And it really kind of, I mean, if it was just one hat, but it was a sea of hats. And so, again, it was like this just sea of pink, which I think that just shows you, you know, one woman can maybe go so far, but a sea of a million women can move mountains.
Yeah, there's no pretending that was not our march.
Right. Yeah, no, I mean, even though it was so intersectional, I'd never for once thought that any of those other issues distracted from the fact that it was a women's march. And I know that there were a lot of conversations around the inclusive aspect of the women's march, but I never once felt like, because they're all feminist issues. They really are all the environment, education, immigration, Black Lives Matter, equal pay, I mean, family leave. Like, these are not just isolated issues. They're all intersectional with feminism. And you can't talk about any of them without bringing in class and race and reproductive rights. I mean, it's all part of the same pot. So I never felt like any of those other issues distracted or detracted from our statement.
When you had your organizational meeting, there was a lot of talk about what to wear,
Mm-hmm.
and you'd be comfortable. But did everyone wear, in your 9-pack, did everyone wear appropriate clothing, and were they comfortable throughout the day?
Yeah, it was funny because we were all watching the weather for the weeks leading up to the march. And being in January in DC, it could go either way. So we were really all preparing for worst case scenario. We were preparing for it to be freezing cold. And the nice thing was that it wasn't. It was like the perfect March weather. I mean, it really was. It was like mid to high 50s and overcast. So even like we didn't even have to worry about getting sunburned. It was perfect weather. Everybody wore appropriate shoes. Everybody was fully prepared. I mean, again, women are by nature very thorough and prepared, and so we had everything covered.
I think we almost obsessed about it.
It really was. It was really. I felt like we were organizing for a march in a third world country, and that we might not ever return. And God knows if we have to go without a meal. Like it just felt like we were preparing. And then again, we did not know what we were going into. We really had no idea what we were going into. We didn't know how the day was going to end up. We didn't know what we were preparing for. None of us had done this before. I mean, even some of the older women on the bus, I don't think necessarily. I mean, maybe one or two of them had marched before, but for the most part, none of us had done something like this before, so we didn't know. So we just went went prepared for the worst case scenario. We went prepared for the bus getting stranded and for us being freezing cold, and had pillows and blankets and like those heat packs and gloves and extra socks and extra underwear and snacks and trail mix and waters, and people brought poise pads, just any chapstick, cash. Everybody had plenty of cash on them. Like, it's like seriously, we were going to our nation's capital. The city is populated with plenty of Starbucks. I don't know what we were thinking, but we were all very well prepared. And nobody, except for Janet, who, I just was so impressed by her, because she did just have surgery, and she stayed on her feet all day long, and she kept up, and she marched, and there was no way in hell she was giving up. And she was hurting afterwards. We were all pretty sore, but our rebound rate is a lot quicker than somebody who just had surgery. But I was so impressed by her. So
it shows determination, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about how you all feeling when you got back onto the bus.
Okay.
Like, talk about the trip back.
Getting back on the MARTA was a whole nother thing. Or the metro. So we marched to, we passed the White House, and then we got on a metro. I forget which stop it was. Some other park station. Anyway. And so we got in line. We kind of analyzed our choices, because there was not crowded metro station. And we were all pretty tired. We hadn't eaten other than our trail mix and cereal bars. None of us had eaten. We were tired. So we analyzed our choices, and we all just said, wherever we go, there's going to be a line. So let's just get in this line. And we got up to the escalator to get onto the metro, and they stopped us, just for crowd control. And so we were there for 20 minutes waiting to be let down, and we decided to start singing. Of course. So we started singing "This Land Is Your Land" and all, "Lean on Me," and all sorts of other whatever songs that we knew, and everybody in the metro in that area started singing with us, and it was really beautiful. And somebody, there were cameras everywhere. People were taking photos and video everywhere, so somebody's got it somewhere. It was really funny, because during "This Land Is Your Land," this pigeon flew in and hovered over the crowd and then flew back out. We were like, "Whoa, what was that?" So finally we got down on the metro, and we get onto the train, and there was a family of Trump supporters sitting on the train. And they took up 3 rows, and there was a mom and a son, and then 2 sons, and then the dad was in the front row, and the dad was kind of, man spreading and taking up the front 2 seats. And at that point, not too many people on the train, but by the next stop and the stop after that, really the crowd started to load on. And so as it started to get more crowded, he said, "You can sit down next to me." And so he slid over, and I sat next to him, and my friend Ellie got a picture of it. She's got it somewhere. I haven't gotten it from her yet, but she's got it. I've seen it, of the 2 of us. And I'm all in my... I don't think I ever answered your last question, by the way, about what we were wearing. Well, I kind of did, but we were all we had shirts made. We had T-shirts made. So Connie Moore and I made, with the help of a friend of ours who's a graphic designer, she made shirts for us. So they were just white shirts with a purple ribbon, and it said "Women's March Atlanta 2017," so that people knew we were coming from Atlanta. Women's March on DC, I think it said. Anyway, so a lot of us were wearing that. And it was funny, because we didn't know what we were going into, and we didn't think that... We thought we'd have heavy jackets over our T-shirts. And we were wearing jackets, but they were open. It wasn't hot enough, or it wasn't cold enough to even have our jackets tied up. And then we also had sashes made because we wanted to have some kind of like visual identification. So we had purple sashes made, and those said Women's March 2017, I think. And so here I am, my pink pussy hat and my Women's March shirt, and I had a nasty woman sticker on my face and a sash across me. Like, there was no mistaking what side I was on. And the Trump supporter family all had 45 and Trump all over their hats and their shirts. So there was no mistaking what side they were on. And, you know, I really, really wanted to engage him in conversation, but I also didn't want him to think that I was being flippant or facetious. And so I chose to stay silent. But I really, really wanted to understand what he thought we were doing and know what his day was like. Because they were in the city. They were clearly tourists in the city. I don't know where they were from, where they were going, but I would have loved for somebody to, as a third party, to have come and talked to us and been able to open that conversation up, because I would have loved to hear how their day was and what it was like for them. And they got off at a stop before we did, and as they were all leaving, the wife looked at a bunch of us and said something like, "Y'all be safe," which I thought was really, really sweet. You know, it's just not, even that scenario was not a hostile situation. And then we carried on the rest of the way, got off at back at RFK. We were still chanting, and found our way back to the bus. And by then it was we planned to be back at the bus by 6 p.m. And we got back, and again, hadn't eaten anything. And at that point, we were just ready to get on the bus. I'm like, I want a drink. I want some food. I want to sit down. I want to just be comfortable for a minute. And Rollo was late. And, you know, traffic was a nightmare, I'm sure. He was Ubering back to the bus or taking a taxi, and he kept texting us that they were stuck in traffic. So it's not on him, but, you know, you get to that point where you hit a wall, and I hit a wall, and so we all kind of gathered by the bus, and sat, and some people did buy food, and so they shared food, and you know, we made sure everybody was there, started doing the head counts of everybody, and then we got back on the bus and headed back. We stopped in somewhere just outside of DC for dinner, and we went into this restaurant, Qdoba, in Roanoke, maybe? I don't even remember. And we walked in, and there was this one couple there that gave us a weird look. And it made me uncomfortable, but I'm like, okay, one couple out of this whole day, like, that's fine. So got a little something to eat. We took a little break, and then we just kept on rolling, and then we stopped again at that same rest stop to fuel up in Virginia. We stopped before we stopped and ate. We stopped to pick up two other guys who were going to help Rollo drive back. This one guy, Sean, and another guy, which was a bit of a relief, because I was really way more concerned and nervous about the bus ride than I was about the march for a large part of it. Too many accidents on highways, too many bus stories. In fact, on our way up at one point, there was concern about the driver swerving as we were getting in, and it was raining both ways. Like, you know, I'm not a good backseat driver. So that kind of had me a little worked up. But we got back on the bus. I managed to sleep maybe for 2 hours on the bus on the way down.
How was the mood on the bus by that time?
Everybody was exhausted. Everybody was just exhausted. I mean, everybody was proud. Everybody was everybody was commenting about head counts, like places where there were marches and how many people marched. And so, the reports that we saw, everybody kept saying there were 500,000 at the DC march. But we heard from somebody, it might have been a police officer at one of the metro stops, that there were like 1.2 or 1.3 million women there, people there. And we all felt like there were that many people there. If you look at those pictures, every street is just a sea of people. So we all felt like there were that many people there from what we saw firsthand. So I don't know. I guess the count that came out was like 700,000 or something, but I think it was way more. And then hearing how many people marched in Atlanta, 65,000 when they only expected 10, was just hearing how many people marching in like Oklahoma and Arkansas and North Dakota and Idaho. It's like, whoa. I never expected this to have such a big ripple effect.
That must have been kind of nice to hear that as you're like tired at the end of the day.
Yeah.
It's like, it almost like further reinforces like the feelings that you had on the way up when you realized that there's people in other countries doing it. It's like,
it did.
Yeah.
It definitely felt like we accomplished something that was bigger than ourselves. And even the mood with the drivers was interesting. We got off on Memorial Drive, and Sean, who was driving at the time, started saying, how thankful he was for us, and I don't think any of us really knew what we were going into and how big of an effect it was going to have. But I felt like by the time we got off that bus, everybody knew what we did, and everybody knew the magnitude of what we accomplished, down to the driver of our bus, who was thanking us and thanking us for marching and thanking us for fighting for our beliefs, and whether or not he believed what we believed, he never went to that level, but he did support our marching and standing up for what we believed. And I think that the numbers really drove that home. And I was so proud of Atlanta.
Yeah.
I mean, even the week before that District 5 was the horrible District 5 and John Lewis and all of that. And so like the week before, I was like, man, I really wish I was marching in Atlanta. Mm-hmm. And considered, obviously I couldn't because I was organizing, but I almost a little tinge of regret for not staying here and marching here, but knowing just how well represented Atlanta was so amazing.
I think every city, they exceeded expectations.
LA was, what was the count in LA?
I think it was actually at least as big as DC.
Yeah.
At least as big.
And they were expecting maybe 100,000 people, and it was like 800,000 people or something. Just amazing.
Yeah. What did you think about Donald Trump's response to the march?
I didn't really pay much attention. I mean, I would have loved to have thought that he was peering out of the window watching us and hearing us. I know he wasn't there that day. He was somewhere else that day.
Playing golf.
Right. He was at the CIA. He was at the CIA that
That's
day,
right.
saying something.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't really matter because it wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't even really about him. It was about us. I mean, obviously, we want to have our voices heard by the current administration, but the more the current administration takes hold, the more I realize our voices don't matter to them. I mean, you look at the town halls across the country with their representatives just not showing up. It's clear that our voice will not be heard in this administration. However, back to the point of women running for office, we will not let this happen again.
Yeah.
We may not be heard this time, but we will be heard in 2018, and we will be heard in 2020,
Yeah.
and we will not forget. This is a wound that will not heal.
Let's talk about the day that you got back. So you got back early in the morning,
Right, we rolled in at like 6 or 7 a.m. in the morning.
and your family's there to greet you.
Yeah, and I didn't know that they would be either, which was really, really wonderful. Matt texted me, and he, just as we were like about hitting Atlanta, he texted and said, let me know when you're getting off on Memorial. And so I did, and so we pulled in, and I'm exhausted. I, again, haven't really slept, and pull in, and I see my kids standing there with the welcome home sign, and it was just, I was so proud of them, and so proud of myself, and so proud of all of us, and what we just accomplished, and it was really overwhelming. It was really overwhelming.
Well, and to get off the bus knowing that your kids had done the same as you, but
Yeah.
in Atlanta. the
And
day
I didn't know
before.
that until that evening, coming home, when I saw pictures that they sent, and I was so proud of them.
How have you felt since? Like how like thinking back, think about your expectations for it and what the reality was, and
Yeah.
and how that all fits in with like how you're feeling now.
Yeah. Well, that day I was exhausted, but I couldn't sleep. And so we just kind of piddled around the house and did some stuff. And by like 8 o'clock that night, 7 o'clock that night, I felt like I was going to pass out. And just anytime I stood up, I was dizzy. So that whole day was just kind of a haze. And then the next day I went into work, and reality started setting in again. I started seeing some of the opposition, and again, this like, I don't understand why everybody felt the need to march kind of thing. And that started to seep in and really started to frustrate me. I was equally, I'll say this. So I had so many people telling me how proud they were of me, and had so much support from people from so many different facets of life, that the one or two people who did not support me, while it hurt and it stung, I was able to put that away. And it, any kind of, optimistic self-talk, it takes work. It takes a lot of work to not get driven down by negativity and to stay positive. So it took a lot of work. And it still does. I mean, it takes a lot of self-talk to stay out of the negativity around all of it. But I just kept reminding myself how many women were there in support of me, and how the 2 or 3 women who didn't understand it they paled in comparison to the numbers of women who did. But I did, there was one person in particular who, she made a point to say, while you and I don't agree on the positions, I fully support you and I'm proud of you for marching for what you believe in. And that really fed me. That filled me up, that made me feel good, because a lot of other people haven't been able to do that.
Yeah.
And it hurts. It hurts when people don't get it. My stepmother is very pro-life, and instead of showing support just like this other woman did, she just posted pro-life stuff all day long, which that was her one issue. She's a one-issue voter. I know she wasn't a Trump supporter from the beginning, so it wasn't surprising by any stretch, but it would have been nice to have had her support.
For just having your voice heard.
Right.
Yeah, that's your right to do that.
Yeah. And since then, as far as the march is concerned, I don't think there's any question about the power it had, and I think that it speaks in volumes that, for one group, 140 women wanted to sign up for leadership training, compared to 30 from the year before. So I think it's working. I think the motivation, people are inspired. The thing that filled me up the most was that my husband had a dentist appointment after the march. And as I said, Davis was my dental hygienist daughter. And Davis, she's very quiet. She's very soft-spoken and quiet. But she apparently told her mom, which Monica then expressed to my husband, that she wants to be just like me when she grows up. And I just thought, what? I haven't done anything. What did I do? I haven't done anything. And yet I'm inspiring this young woman to march and stand up for what she believes. And so I felt like, well, maybe I have done something, I did do something.
You stepped up. I
stepped up. And I see it in my kids too. And, it's so hard to be a parent. It's so hard to navigate, engage if you're doing it right. And every once in a while you get tried and tested, and sometimes you fail, and sometimes you see little victories. And I see my kids, like my son suddenly says he wants to be a tree hugger when he grows up. And I'm just, where did that come from? The other day he said he wants to be a pizza maker, a tree hugger, a worker, and a baseball player. And I'm like, I love that you want to be a tree hugger. I love all of those things. That's awesome. And my daughter, I'm so proud of her. And you can tell they just absorb everything. So there was an issue at school the other day where this one little boy told her friend, he said something to her like, you could have been a slave, or something like that. And I asked Frankie how she responded, and I was kind of worried. Like, have I done my job? And she said that she told him that those were issues that were dealt with years ago, and that there are no more slaves, and that it was not a very nice thing for him to say.
And she's 6.
And I felt like that day I had, give me a gold star as a parent, like, okay, I aced that test. I mean, because it could go, I'm a white woman. My husband's a white man living in a world where we are being thrust into so many conversations, and we come with such a different lived experience than our black friends do. And I think I'm still learning how to understand. This is another thing that's really my eyes have been open to, is white feminism and black feminism, and how the two can coexist and where the differences are. And so for me, as a white woman who's raising a white daughter who will hopefully grow up to embrace her feminism, and be strong and be active and still leave space for others to have a voice and to stand up and support others who are not like her. I mean, that was a really proud moment for me. But like I said, like I'm still learning how to be a supportive white feminist for all women. And it's not easy. I mean, we have a lived experience that is so unique, each and every one of us, and navigating a world where so many people are faced with different obstacles every day and different lived experiences. And we you know, as humans, by nature, we always want to see things in black and white. We want to see things like it's all right or it's all wrong, or, you know, there can't be any room, there's never any room for critique anymore, or maybe there never was. So finding that space for there to be some critique and some growth and some understanding, and not always having to put your opinion first, is one of the bigger personal growth things that I've been working on through all of this. And even with the gender issue, one of the critiques that I heard about the march was that it was way too vagina focused and feminism as a physical body part. And understanding that feminism can take the form, if you're a transgender, having a vagina does not make you a feminist. That's been another one of those really eye-opening, powerful ways to interpret all of what has been discussed over the past few weeks, is gender intersecting with feminism itself, which you would think that they would go hand in hand, but it doesn't.
It's like a whole new world.
It really is.
That we have to, and it's about time we adapted and thought more broadly about it.
And I have one of my bigger struggles, you know, with the election was this whole, you know, Bernie versus Hillary thing. And did I put my feminism in front of the country? And grappling with, was I so blinded by wanting to have a female president that it clouded my decision making. And it's been one of those things that I keep rehashing over in my head. Although I think I'm starting to come out on the other side of that and be more compassionate with myself about it, but also understanding why part of me feeling that way is misogyny in itself, and not feeling animosity towards those who are provoking me to feel that way. I mean, realistically, had Hillary been a man, she would have been elected. She was the most qualified candidate. I love Bernie Sanders. I always felt like Bernie Sanders came on the scene as a Democrat for the first time, not running as an independent, to make sure Hillary was prepared for the primary or for the general election, to push the platform further to the left, and to really prepare her. Yeah. Had he run as an independent, I would have thought he actually wanted to be president. I never once thought he actually wanted to be president. So, and I know that my perspective in that is unique. It's not a widely held belief by a lot of Bernie supporters. And I still have bitterness towards people who who have those like bumper stickers, "Don't blame me, I voted for Bernie."
Yeah.
And talking through the conversations with people about why Hillary lost. And trying to get them to have that same epiphany that I did. Which was that there's been a campaign against her for 30 years. There has been a campaign against her since she was First Lady and she decided to step out of the box. And the minute she stepped out of that box is when all the hate started. And they've been working this for 30 years.
Can you imagine being that person, having that, and to be able to handle it with dignity?
And to show up on Inauguration Day.
Yeah.
I mean, part of me would love to see her, I want to see her win. You know, I want to see her, I don't think it would be healthy for any of us if she ran again. I think history will put her down as a martyr for the feminist movement. I don't know how are the history books, how are the feminist theory books going to position this wave of feminism? I don't know. Is it going to the fourth wave of feminism? I don't know how it's going to be positioned, but I think she will go down as a martyr for whatever this movement is, and I think history will be kind to her. I look at the candidates who are running or being promoted to run in 2020, and I get disappointed when I see Cory Booker and I see all these males. I'm hoping that other women, I love Elizabeth Warren, but I feel like she's had enough time for them to create another story to be told around her. I would love for her to run, but I think if you look at like Kristen Gillibrand or Kamala Harris, you see some of these other women who are kind of gaining platform. It would be really nice to see one of them run. I don't think I will be happy until we have a female president. I don't feel like our job with this movement is going to be complete until that happens. Will it be next time? I hope so, but I'm already skeptical, and I'm already disappointed. But I'm heartened by the fact that we have so many women and so many organizations promoting women. I mean, between Emily's List and She Should Run and Georgia Win List, and I mean, there's just so many other organizations that are promoting and helping boost women up to run for office. Even in Georgia, you look at Sally Yates, who is potentially going to run. Stacey Abrams, who is one of our state senators, she is amazing. If she were to run, I think she could win. Again, even on the state level, like I look at Jason Carter and would love for him to run again, but again, he's another white male. I don't even know the accurate stats, but it's like 13% of our representatives are women. It's not even close to being equal. So I don't think I'll be happy until we have that. And we're getting there.
Mm-hmm. Well, you're going to take part.
Yeah,
you're going to be part of the whole thing.
Yeah, one of these days I'll get up there. The job doesn't pay well. So I've got to figure that out first, because as I said, I'm the sole breadwinner, and I've got to figure out how we can make it work. We have a very modest level of living, so I think once I get Finn out of daycare, it'll be more realistic, because that's like a mortgage payment every month.
But yeah. What are your, I get a sense a lot of your hopes are around women, kind of making themselves present in the political sort of arena. What are your greatest fears over the next year or so?
My greatest fears are around the environment. My greatest fears are that our water supply is going to be which it already is in risk, but I feel like it's going to be in serious jeopardy here soon. My greatest fear is about sustainability. And I look at all of the distractions around all of these other things that are happening, and all of these EPA orders are just kind of being swept under the table. And I'm all about increasing jobs and financial sustainability, but we've got to be going about this in a realistic way. And I just don't, the cost of water desalination is still so high. And you look at what's happening in Flint, and you look at what's happening with fracking and droughts in California. And I am worried. Water. And you look at some of the turmoil across the globe, and so much of it is induced by water issues and water crises, and that's not ever being talked about. Everybody's talking about oil. Nobody's talking about the fact that water, natural resources, are one of the biggest threats to our sustainability and to, provoking all of these horrible things happening around the globe. And it's coming for us. It's coming for us quickly. Climate change aside, the water issue to me, that is the common denominator among everyone on this planet, is that we need water to survive. And without it, we can have a debate until we're blue in the face about whether healthcare is a right or not. But I don't think that there's any question about whether or not water is a right. We should be protecting that far beyond anything else, beyond building a wall, and so, I brought 2 children into this world. I'm not bringing any more children into this world. I feel like we are giving them way more work to do than they may have the ability to accomplish. If I didn't already have children, I would not bring any children into this world right now. And I hate to be one of those people. One of the more amusing things to sort out is I've seen the fear on the right over the past 8 years be so strong and vicious and kind of nonsensical. And then I look at the fears that we have on the left, and I hope that they're not just, I don't think that they're made up. I think these are real, valid threats that we're afraid of.
A lot of them are science-based.
And they're science-based. So April 22nd is the March for Science. And I really want to go. I am going to be in Las Vegas at the NAB conference. Maybe there will be a sister march in Las Vegas. There's certainly a lot of technology-focused people, although engineers are typically more conservative. However, I hope that there are other cities marching for science, and if Vegas is one of them, I will be out there that day marching for science. I just don't. We're in, again, it's like an upside down world, like alternative facts, doubting what these scientists are saying, doubting NASA. Like, I just don't understand it. And it's really going to be our downfall. I feel like we're all getting played by all of these millionaires and billionaires who they know what the story is. Bottled water. Rebottling our natural resources and selling it back to us. Anyway, I'm most afraid of our coming water shortage and water crisis.
And there are a lot of people who are right now are afraid, frustrated, very concerned. Do you have any like strategies for sort of coping in the meantime with we have at least 2 years before there's another election?
Right. Yeah, I mean, we've taken our bus group and turned it into, I don't think I finished telling this story either. So we started calling ourselves the Peach Pack, and then at one point I saw a sign and it said impeach and had a peach on it. And I was like, oh, we should call ourselves the Impeach Pack. So we did. So now we've taken it and broadened it out to the whole bus group, and then some people who were going to come and ended up changing their plans. So there's like 50 or 60 of us now, and part of my coping is just continuing that mission. So relaying information to all the peaches and sharing, there's a march this Saturday, or let's rally around John Ossoff for District 6 and get him elected, or there's a rally, there's a event for Planned Parenthood, or there's, and being able to accumulate that information and dissect it around the group has been helpful to me to keep that going. It's also been kind of an avalanche as well. So it's been a struggle to take a break. I've started tuning out a lot on Facebook, and not by defriending anybody or blocking people, but by just not looking at it all the time. Finding better, everybody struggles with trying to be present in the moment, but trying to be present with my children. Trying to really map out what my future looks like.
Because that looks very different now from what you, a couple of years ago, you kind of expected it to be.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I've never really been one of those people who had like a plan, or at least not for the past 20 years. Have I been one of those people who had like, this is what I want to be when I grow up, and this is how I'm going to get there? I've never had that life plan before. I've kind of always lived more organically than that. But now I feel like I'm starting to put that back into position of what kind of a goal do I want to accomplish with my life? What do I want to do? It's given me a lot of purpose in my daily life. But yeah, in terms of coping, just kind of tuning out a lot. I am really, really lucky because I have wonderful neighbors. So when I get home, like tonight, we're grilling out and we're going to have margaritas and we're just going to like decompress and have a wonderful time. And they've always been like, we've been very close because of all of this development stuff going on. And it's all been solidified, and, we spend election night together. Like we're all on the same page. And so, they're a nice way to, we don't have to talk about politics. Yeah. We can talk about our other neighbor just getting goats and having goats in his backyard. Like we can talk about other things, and we've already hashed through all of that. We don't have to continually go over it again and again. But when one of us does get inspired to talk about it, it's a very safe space to talk about it. And there's no like questioning, So it's my neighbors, my family. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
I have one last question. For anyone who's thinking about going to a march, wherever it is in the future, because there probably will be plenty of marches ahead, what advice would you give them?
Check the weather. Check the weather. No. I mean, my advice would be just to show up. Just show up. It's funny. I have one friend in particular who was one of my friends who didn't understand why I was marching. She supported me, but she didn't understand why I was marching. And after the march, I sent her a picture, and I said it was the best day of my life. And I have questioned whether I actually mean that or not. I mean, everybody's like, the day I had my children, that was the best day of my life. Yeah, of course, that's up there. Having my children, those were both fabulous days. But for me, for my own personal being, my own self, my own feminist self, that day was the most inspiring, the most affirmation that I've had, I think, ever. I mean, more than graduating from college, more than, getting married. It was not about what society was dictating I should do in my life. It was about me saying, I'm doing this for myself because I need to for myself, and being affirmed by the 4 million plus people who marched around the globe that they were with me in solidarity. I mean, it was really, really, just being there was just such an amazing thing. So my first advice to anybody would be, if you feel passionate about something, show up, go. And then the rest, just check the weather.
Well, that's all I've got for you. Is there anything you want to say before we get done?
No, I don't think so. No, I don't know how this is all going to turn out. I don't know where it's going to go. I know more women are going to get involved, but that's about all I know. And I'm proud of that, and I'm proud to be a part of that. I'm proud to inspire that. Yeah.
And I'm glad we're documenting all this.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
Well, thank you.
Yeah,
this is
thank
great.
you.
This was wonderful.
Thank you.